Very honored to attend your conference and for creating a future-proof and inclusive work. And I think it's a very timely discussion you organized. And I listened a bit to what the previous speaker said. And I must say, I fully agree with the different analyses he made. And I also looked through your blueprint, Companies for an Inclusive Society. And I must say that really this is a very visionary, but at the same time, a very practical approach to the future of work. And especially at the moment where we have big transformations, and this was already mentioned, big transformations in our economy, the Green Deal, the changes which we have to operate at the level of our economies, but even at a much broader scale, at the level of our societies, reducing dramatically the CO2 emissions, what means that finally we have to change not only the technology, but also the way how we produce, how we live, how we consume. And this happens also at a time where technology is changing very rapidly, and we have seen during the pandemic how fast digitalization, which was already a very fast ongoing process, have transformed the world of work because the numbers of people from one day to another who had to work but also communicate as we do now remotely had increased dramatically. And this means that indeed we have these big changes going on, and certainly this implies also a lot of changes at the level of companies. And I think this is also an awareness that the business models, the way how companies operate, the way how companies manage their human resources has to be adapted to this big changes. So I think the idea, and therefore I congratulate all those who participate in this project, and especially also CSR Europe, but also the companies who are associated with this project. I think they really help us to manage and to be successful with this transformation, especially in relation to climate change. I think that indeed the world of work is at a crossroad, at a real crossroad. We more and more get the possibilities to reshape the world of work in a very positive, human-centered way. Technologies are there, the possibilities to do so are there, but there is also a risk that finally we go away from this human-centered orientation. And therefore, I think precisely what happens in many companies now to value human resources, to reflect on a purpose for all companies beyond profits alone. I think this is a big issue, beyond profits alone, but really to assign purposes to companies is extremely important. And it was already mentioned before, this new recovery we are experiencing, which is quite fast, but with a lot of uncertainties too, we see suddenly a lot of shortages coming up. Shortages at the level of materials, semiconductors, energy prices going on, but also shortages at the level of labor force, especially qualified labor force. And this is astonishing because at the same time, we had a very short time ago, we had an increase in unemployment. We had a lot of people working on short-term systems or schemes. And now we are, many companies, I had the past few days, a lot of exchanges with representatives of companies, industries, small and medium-sized companies, and everybody from all member states complain about the problem that they have shortages at the level of qualified labor force. And I think the reasons are multiple. And we see, by the way, the same thing more or less in the US. First, certainly the acceleration of the digital transformation shows that we have big mismatches at the level of our labor force, and that our efforts to skill people, to give them the right education, to promote digital skilling are insufficient. And this is a responsibility at the level of public authorities, but it's also a responsibility at the level of companies. So I think here we have to reflect what kind of solutions can we promote now to reduce this huge mismatches, which finally are preventing companies to develop, preventing companies to invest, preventing also companies to innovate. So I think this is the big challenge, the Skillings challenge. How can we do that? And here I think we have to leave a bit this classical way of education. We have really to make a new culture of skilling part of our economic and also societal system. And here we see that digitalization is now everywhere. It's at the level of many jobs, of nearly all the jobs. And we have really to focus on this skilling. And it's clear it's technical skills. We need to invest more in the famous mathematics, technology, the famous MINT areas, but we also have to deal with soft skills. And this is also some linkage with one of your essential points in your blueprint, which is inclusion. Inclusion at the level of society, trying to extend also to those who may be excluded. First, certainly, we have the challenge of gender equality, which is far from being reached. Gender equality at all levels, access to education, access to the same wages, access especially also to the digital world. We have a digital divide at the level of gender. So I think this is, but also to other groups. And therefore, fighting poverty, especially child poverty, are elements which are investments in a way for the future, investment for our economy. The second point, which I think is important, are values. And therefore, there is a strong linkage with companies with purpose. We notice now that a lot of people do not want to go back to their previous jobs. First, because they complain about working conditions, they complain about very low salaries, very low wages, and they are not motivated to go back to their previous job. So some sectors really are in difficulty to recruit because of these reasons. Especially young people also are directly impacted by this evolution. And therefore, I think companies have to change in that sense, that they offer this idea of purpose, purpose mainstreaming, purpose mindset, but also guaranteeing better working conditions. The Commission has launched a new strategic framework on health and safety, which is important. I also saw in your document an emphasis on healthy working conditions and the problems in this context, which are mental health issues. So we see a development of mental illnesses due to bad working conditions, due to stress, more and more burnouts. And you asked, by the way, a question on the impact and the consequences of burnouts. And this is, I think, a very big issue. And this is also something where people more and more become sensitive to on these working conditions, healthy working conditions. And for the society, it's an enormous cost, because more and more illnesses, mental illnesses, represents an enormous cost for society. So I think this is an extremely important dimension of a sustainable and inclusive world of work. Now, on a few remarks which I would like to add. First, on the basis of what I said, I think certainly inequalities are growing in our society. And therefore, we have really to reduce inequalities for not only for social reasons, for the cohesion of our societies, but also in a longer range for the for growth and for the innovative capacity of our economies. And here, fair wages are the starting point. And therefore, we have made this proposal on fair or decent minimum wages to fight inward poverty, because unfortunately, we still have millions of Europeans in inward poverty. So I think in that sense, fair wages are quite important. The second point I would like to raise is the digital evolution and fair working conditions. So we cannot have the economy of the 21st century very much based on artificial intelligence, on a very rapid evolution of digital technologies and working conditions which go back more to the 19th century. And therefore, we will tackle the issue of platforms. And I'm very clear on that. It's not to reduce the development of platforms or to hamper their development. It's really to have the development of platforms at the same time also bring platforms in the general framework of fair working conditions, of our system of protection and non-discrimination. When we look at some kinds of platforms, we know that many young people work on platforms, many people coming from the diversity in our society working on platforms, and we really have to give them social rights, labor rights, fair wages, protection. And I think this can be balanced, the development of platforms with the flexibility they need, and on the other hand, labor conditions which are fair and which guarantee, by the way, also flexibility to those working on platforms. So my last point is also on companies and the overall system, which is coming back to, and you raise it also in your blueprint. That's more participation, more dialogue, a social dialogue at company level. If we want to have a different kind of company, and especially we have seen through the telework, people have been in favor of telework at the beginning. Then they have been a bit more reluctant to have only telework. So people, I think they are in favor of more flexible working arrangements. And company, by the way, need also more flexible arrangements because markets are changing, the way how services or production goes need more flexibility. I think we need to find the balances at this level in companies through a better functioning of social dialogue in the companies. So the issue of social partnership is extremely important. And by the way, we see that in those countries, in those member states, where social dialogue is very strong at all levels, and especially also at company level, where collective bargaining is very well established. Finally, the economic results are also better. The functioning of companies are better. The possibility to restructure companies, and we are also in a way, due to technology, to markets, to globalization, in a permanent restructuring, this restructuring is also functioning better. So I'm very much pleading in the context of social responsibility, also in the context of this huge transformations, digital and green, in favor of a better social dialogue at all levels, and especially also at the at the level of company decision making. Thank you very much.